All right, Parashat Vayigash is dedicated Leilui Nishmat Chaim ben Sultana. Parashat Vayigash points out to the moment that a person stops running from himself and who he is. And if we're going to look very carefully at this parasha, you would see that the real tension of this parasha is not necessarily around the faith of Binyamin, and not even Yosef, but rather around something else, a different concept. And the concept is called shame, busha. Shame is the moment that the soul does everything in its ability in order for it not to find itself or not to face itself. And not to be so-called guilty or to feel guilt. In other words, if you say I'm guilty, ashamti, right? I'm guilty means I did ra. I did something bad. Ashamti, that's what we say, ashamti, right? Busha, shame, means I am bad. And there's a difference between I did something bad to I am bad. And the brothers carry within themselves a shame that was frozen for years, was really oppressed and pushed to the side for years. And they build around that an identity that allowed them to function, right? An identity that allowed them to have a family, life, whatever they experience life. But in the heart of that identity, there is a core that really desire to move, but it's paralyzed. That core that is paralyzed is inside of it, and then all around it is basically a facade. Come Shlomo, come next to us. תן לשלמה קצת שולט. מה, זה משמר.
אכלתי המון.
משמר, זה אוכל נפש.
בישראל לא הייתי אוכל גם פה.
So, and that's what happens to many of us. Many of us, for whatever reason, we feel shame or something like this, and therefore we build a facade that would allow us to function, but it's really in the inside of it is this paralyzed part that really hurts us. So we are able to the word, for example, erase the concept of a brother among us, right? Because they kind of erased yourself from their existence, or at least pushed it to the side that they would not be bothered with for the day to day. So if you look at the word, for example, Vayigash, Vayigash is not just a physical description of movement, but also a spiritual movement. Yehuda, when he was approaching, Vayigash is to approach. When Yehuda was approaching, he did not approach Yosef only, but he also approached the truth that once you are making the path, you can escape it. That inevitable truth that we all have to meet one way or another. So what he was doing here, it's something, if you look at it this way, even more miraculous and brave than we could imagine. That's why I don't like all this midrashim, and you'll see later on why. All these midrashim that portray them as the older way of a fight, and this one he was roaring, and this one he brought his son, and his son was roaring. I mean, that's very nice, but that's good for kids in kindergarten or in elementary school. You concentrate on those midrashim, you'll miss the whole point. As somebody once said, you know, if you take your finger, you point it to the moon, right? Don't concentrate on the finger, or you'll miss all this heavenly glory. You know who said that?
Karate Kid? Bruce.
No, Bruce yeah, Rav Baruch Leibowitz.
No.
Bruce Lee. Oh, you miss all this heavenly glory, right? So that's what it is. All the brothers, lived within defense mechanism that they had around themselves, which was silence, there was denial, rationalization, and mutual guilt or fault. They were putting blame on everybody else. And we do the same thing. This parasha is so perfect for us today, because in a way it describes what we all, and especially as a nation, going through. So, the past presses you, puts a lot of pressure on you. But whatever you do, you have to remember that it doesn't disappear. It's always there. It's always there. And then whatever happened to you in the past will come back to you in different forms. And sometimes it will be in a form of an anxiety. You'll develop an anxiety as a threat, sometimes as a small son that was sold to slavery. The parasha teaches us a very important lesson. First of all, it teaches us to grow beards, not to shave them. It teaches us a very important lesson. And what's the lesson? What's the lesson? The lesson is like this. Whatever you are not willing to meet will meet you. Whatever you're not willing to meet will meet you. If there's something that you need to deal with it on your terms, because otherwise you will have to deal with it on its terms, not your terms. And that's the Gisha. That's what the meeting of Yosef and the brothers, that obsessive repetition that comes all the time, right? That's the problem that we have here, that we see it here. The soul, our spirit, creates a certain scene, right? Which is a new scene, a new reality. Irrational comes from the how do you call it? From the
subconscious.
From the subconscious, exactly, right? But you know that the subconscious does not really heal you, but rather it keeps on repeating, it keeps on trying to duplicate itself, and so on and so forth. That's why the reality in ancient Egypt, right, really copies the pattern, identical of what really was back then. It's this young brother, right? And that's why they say, and if you see the conversation that they had all the time, it's a young brother, there is a loving father, there is a danger of getting lost, there is power, and so on and so forth, right? And this is exactly what Freud, if you know him, Sigmund Freud, he called compulsion to repeat. And we, in our times today, do the same thing. We have a compulsion to repeat, especially the scenarios and situations, and sometimes we romanticize on that. And we think how great it was, and we want to repeat it, not understanding that the same result that happened to our ancestors, by our compulsion to repeat it, their fate will be our fate as well. And their fate was not that good. And we are giving a chance in you all the time to break away from it, but we are so compelled to repeat that pattern that we persuade ourselves that that's the right thing to do. But here the Torah adds another important or valuable lesson to all of us, that repetition is not necessarily just a punishment, but rather a opportunity for tikkun, to fix up. Yehuda, from a sense of survival, right, and the way he's talking, the long speech that Yehuda has, right? If you look at this, it's not just a political sophistication, right? There's nothing so sophisticated about it. He's not a demagogue. But there is something very significant that Yehuda is experiencing, is a transition, is a deep spiritual transition from a situation, and pay attention because this is what we all do, from a situation of how would I save myself to a state of what am I willing to be. How I'm going to save myself. So I'm going to get a guy that hates me and I'm going to invite him to light my Hanukkah candles. Are you going to be able to live with yourself like this? if you know what I mean. It's very important. We always want to survive. So how I'm going to save myself? But are you willing to live with yourself after that situation? Are you going to be able to? And that's a very deep transition. I think with us right now at this moment, we need to stop saying how we're going to save ourselves from this tsunami of hatred that's coming our way, and I say, are we willing to live like this from this point on again, like our fathers lived in history? And we need to change this attitude. And this is the classical existential moment when a person stops asking what's going to happen to me and stop asking what kind of a person would I be if I am going to run away with it. And that's why I'm telling you, we have to start dealing with the problems. We can't run away from it, because at the end of the day, I don't care what you say, you don't feel good about yourself when you're running with yourself. And Yehuda understands that if he's going to go back to his father without Binyamin, maybe he will be able to continue living, but his life is going to lose its meaning. And life without meaning is not worth it to be called life. So Yehuda, in a way, is the appearance of the adult superego, right? He's doing that in a deeper realm. Yehuda really signifies the birth of a conscience that does not punish you, but rather makes you do things, that encourages you to do things. He is not saying, daddy will die as a tactic or some kind of a technique. He says it because right now he's able to carry the burden of somebody else. When he says, my father will die, in other words, he says, I'm willing to stand up for what it is. I understand where the person is coming from. I'm not just thinking about myself. And this is a very important spiritual and emotional transition from a conscience of a childish conscience, right? Oh, I don't care. I'm just going to sit there quiet, right? And most kids don't want to get into trouble. I don't want to get into trouble. We carry this. We could be 50, 60, 40, 30, 20, whatever years old. Most people would say, I don't get into trouble. I don't let him fall. I'm not stepping up to help him.
Bystander.
Excuse me?
Bystander.
Absolutely. Very few people would say, hey, excuse me, that's wrong. We need to grow up from this. So that's a transition of Yehuda from transitioning from a childish conscience to of fear of punishment and so on and so forth, or not to be liked, or not to be a celebrity, or not to be the good boy and so on and so forth, to an adult and mature conscience which really understands their responsibility to a connection here, right? And that's true, even in husband and wife situations. We need to go. If you don't have this maturity, if you don't have this conscience that will be able to carry you, to make you do things and to assume responsibility without, do yourself a favor, don't get married. If you steal a child inside of you in terms of like, I want to get my hands clean, I don't care what it is, don't get married. Because why ruining somebody else's life? Because you're not mature enough. That's what we need to do. We need to assume responsibility. Learn to assume responsibility. Stop dumping it on everybody else. Say, listen, I screwed up. Nobody said, I know I screwed up. Everybody screws up. Let's see now how I can make it better. Now I know how it is. I know how it feels. I want to make sure it's not going to happen. But if I'm going to say, oh no, it's your fault or his fault or this fault or the other one's fault, I'm never going to be able to learn from this. I'm never going to grow. I'm going to be the same buffoon as I was then 50 years from now. But the only difference is, right now there's so many people involved in your life that you're going to actually hurt them. Whether it's going to be your spouse or your children or your grandchildren or whoever it is, or friends or whatever it is. Because the more you go into life, the more patterns of people's life are going across with you. So it's not just about bringing kids to this world. It's the first thing is to be responsible. Everybody today, everybody needs to get married at 18 years old. How in the world are you supposed to do that, to get 18 years old, if you never took your child to be responsible, to assume responsibility? not to be afraid of punishment. How are you going to do that? It's all the rhetoric that everybody's saying because that's what everybody wants to hear. But we don't do that. Nobody takes responsibility. If you have a shul does not function because they don't have a minyan, the rabbi will blame the congregants will blame the rabbi. And what happens? They never have a minyan. They never have a minyan. If everybody will assume responsibility, listen, it's my responsibility to come to shul. I see they don't have a minyan, I'm going to be here every single day. And then the rabbi will do the same thing. Let me do things to bring the people. Before you know, both parties come together and then you have a functioning shul. That's the way it works. That way it works for everything. Don't tell me, it's very hard to come, there's no parking, there's no this. In Israel, everybody walks, they don't drive to shul. No, you walk to shul, no, what's the big deal? Get your 10,000 steps, no, what's the big deal?
Everywhere though, that's why.
Especially when there are shuls everywhere. You don't live in Wyoming, they have to get a horse and ride half a day to go to shul. You have shuls everywhere here. So, Yosef, now let's talk a little bit Yosef. Yosef also is going to a certain transition. Yosef goes from the from trying to be in control to a certain level of intimacy. Yosef, until this moment, really controls everything. He has the power. He has the knowledge. He's the one he's the one who orchestrating everything. He's the boss, man. But sometimes you should know that having so much control and trying to possess so much control is really a mask of vulnerability. In other words, a person that was hurt so much will have a tendency to be a control freak. A person that somewhere along the line felt that he had no control over his life, that somebody, mommy, daddy, who knows what, always decided for him all his life, he had no control over his life, will tend to be most likely a control freak. That's the way it is. So with all this, we understand that Yosef was actually very vulnerable, right? And that sensation was really raw. It wasn't like refined. It was a raw, painful feeling inside of him. And when he hears Yehuda, something inside of him cracks in the facade that he was putting on. Something on that cracks. And no judicial argument, no something really convinces him, but rather something else. It's the presence of true humanity. He was able, through the sincerity of Yehuda, was able to create a crack inside the facade of power that Yosef had, because he came to him as a real, genuine human being. If you want to know why are we so apart from each other, why we don't feel the pain, is not because of the other person. Yes, the other person has his wall, but we don't have the penetrating power, that sincere power, sincere presence of caring and humanity to actually break away this thing. That's something that we need to work on. Very careful. When we are not present when we need to be, in the moments that are most important, again, whether it's moments with husband and wife, or father and son, or two friends, or whatever it is, be present as a genuine person, human being. Stop with these games. Be there. Stop with your shows that you're putting on. You're not playing a role in a movie. And that's what Yehuda, through this sincerity, was able to break away the mask that Yosef put all the time around him, because he was so hurt for what happened to him and the failing relationship that both he and his brother experienced together. But he couldn't deal with it, that he was a failure in relationship. The brothers couldn't deal with the fact that they were failure in relationship to their own brother. And that's why, again, the Midrash, if you tell me they were yelling and want to kill one another, that kind of beats the whole entire story, or the whole lesson that we can get from this parasha, to be present to one another genuinely. If you tell me that the brothers want to kill Yosef, I'm going to tell you, they never learned anything. They never learned anything. But if we look at it this way, it's a big lesson not only to them, it's a big lesson to us. So now, the Pasuk says, V'lo yachol Yosef leitapek. By the way, where are the senseis? Hello, Sanchin, come over here, take some chulit. Where's your brother? You took chulit? Get over here, I'm not talking, get over here, get chulit. Now, V'lo yachol Yosef leitapek, Yosef could not hold it any longer. That is a moment when a person understands to hold on to whatever I am holding on to is dangerous, is more dangerous to let it go. Because a person would feel, I'm vulnerable if I'm going to let go. Some people live through hatred, and hatred is the fuel that gets them through life. And they're afraid to give up that hatred or that emotion. But you should understand, yes, you're going to be vulnerable if you're going to let go, if you find this place within you to be mochel, but it's more dangerous for you because it will consume you and any good part in you if you're going to hold on to these things until the rest of your life. You can't hold on to whatever your second grade teacher did to you, or whatever daddy didn't do to you when you were in fourth grade, or whatever it is. He didn't come to your show, or he didn't give you chazak baruch when you got enough with this. Let go of this. Because you are going in a path of the wrong way. That path is a destructive path. Let go of it. Be free. Be free. Let go of it. So, Yosef really, at that moment, was dismantling the false self that he had in himself. Yosef in Mitzrayim built a perfect a sense of self that was functioning. It was, he was successful, he was smart, he was efficient, he was ruling. But that's what Winkert says. It says a false and healthy sense of self. That is a defense that was meant to survive a trauma or an earlier trauma. But you, at a certain point, you got to give up that survival mode and start going into living mode. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And when you die, again, as we said, speaks to him from a true point, a truthful point inside of him, that false sense of self cannot really hold because it's not needed anymore. Because Yehuda released the truth, and that what Yosef connected to the truth. So the self did not need, that false self did not need to exist anymore. So he let go of it. And when you do that, then your true self that you tried to oppress all these years would come out like as a volcano. It would erupt and it will come up like this. And you should do so, even if it will be the price will be of a tremendous emotional flood or emotional tsunami. And this is the moment, V'lo yachol Yosef leitapek, Yosef could not hold it any longer. And that is a stage of a constructive collapse, where the whole entire image that he had collapsed. And then what he says to him, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef. Only when he was able to do so, the true Yosef was able to come up. And only when the true Yosef was able to come up, he was able to say something, Ha'od Avinu Chai, is my father still alive? Because if you want to know, why didn't Yosef send a little WhatsApp to his dad? Hey, daddy, I'm here in Egypt, everything's good, why don't you come over? I'll send you a ticket. Because he couldn't do it. Because admitting he couldn't deal with the trauma that he had experienced enough to reach out to call daddy. He said, Daddy, I'm alive. Don't worry about it. I'm okay. He built this facade so strong that it consumed his ability to even be able to say, I really care about my dad. It's not that he didn't care about his dad. He couldn't express that he's caring about his dad because he was so vulnerable. How do you heal such trauma? By really caring about, showing the other person that you're truthfully caring. And that's the whole thing when you go to somebody's, for example, Nichum Avelim. Do you really care? Do you really feel the pain? Or you're just going there to pay lip service? That's why I don't like this whole big thing that people do. They have, your side. It's like mega weddings. That's where's the caring about the person who died. You don't care. You go in there because he came to mine. I go to him. He give me a check. I give him a check. This is not caring. This is baloney. And baloney, most of baloney is not kosher. We need to change this. So the words Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, is really a confession of his identity, of really who he is. Not just a revelation to others, but also a renewal, self-recognition that Yosef at that point stopped to be the victim only. Until now, Yosef was always the victim. He says, from now on, I'm not a victim alone. Right now, I'm not a victim. Right now, I'm Yosef. And we should do the same thing to ourselves. Let's stop being the victims. Let's stand for who we are, truthfully for who we are, and what we believe in. However, together with that, Yosef also stopped being the judge. He agrees to be a person who is vulnerable, with the past, with pain, with compassion, and that is a classical therapeutic moment. Right, doctor? The truth is not being said through yelling or screaming. As we were talking about, they scream on this one, the other scream on this one. Rather, the truth comes through tears. The fear of the brothers, the great anxiety that they had from being able to forgive, that he was able to forgive them, that caused them a tremendous panic. They were panicked. He forgave me. That's and what they were so afraid of, what they were so panicking. They weren't afraid of the punishment, but they were afraid of the forgiveness, being actually to be able to forgive. That's what they were concerned about. Why? Because when I am forgiving, it really forces us to admit that this action was really bad, and I am responsible for that, right? And that's why I'm forgiving you. It's easier to get punished than to really, come across love that did not cancel the truth. Because if I'm forgiving you, I'm basically saying, you're a bad person, but I'm forgiving you. You would rather a person hate you than to be able to hear somebody saying, I forgive you. Because when you say, I forgive you, it's an indication that that person did something bad or the person is bad. People don't want to hear that. It's a paradox. People don't want to hear this. So, and this is a very dangerous moment that people try to avoid, right? And that moment is called intimacy. You can only be the truth with somebody that you feel close enough, intimate enough to be able to show that you're vulnerable, you're willing to admit, you're willing to let go. So we need to really pay attention. This parasha does not end with a punishment, but rather with closeness, with coming closer, which of course many people view it as a more dangerous aspect to the soul, because intimacy would demand from you to give up on the narrative of a victim. You need to stop with this narrative of I am the victim, and to give up on the narrative of I am right and you are wrong, and to be able to meet people as they are. As they are. You'll be able to see the people as they are without putting this list label on them and the other label on them and try to put them in this compartment and the other compartment. Look at the person who he is at this moment. Be present in the moment as the person, with no facade, with nothing like this. And along the line with the people that you're going to need to meet like this, believe it or not, is yourself. You need to be able to meet yourself and to face yourself as you are and be present in that moment. And stop running away from it. The brothers are really forced to meet yourself, not as some kind of a figure who is a threatening figure and so on, but rather as a living human, which is hurtful, which was really suffered, but still a loving person. And the existential message on that of Parashat Vayigash tells us there's no Geulah, there's no redemption without coming closer. There is no healing without talking, and there is no future without responsibility. And unless we're going to accept responsibility for our actions, there's not, chas v'shalom, going to be redemption for us. And the responsibility is on whatever happened in the past. And a person is born at the moment that he stops running away from his difficulties. That's when you start growing, that's when you start becoming a person. And I would even dare to say, right, it says Vayigash Yehuda, right, which is, we said, is a movement against your defense mechanism. It says Vayigash would really mean to really get away from the prevention that you are at. You always try to avoid things, but rather seek contact, try to engage in contact, and to really agree to be able to let others influence you as well and to be a part of a society. And that's the moment that a person says, I don't know how it's going to end, but I'm not willing to be disconnected from this point on. I want to be connected to something. I don't know how it's going to end, but I don't want to be like this anymore. And that's a very important moment of transformation of a person from just being a fake to being a truthful person. And maybe we should ask all a question, for our way of life, right? Where is in your life, each and every one of us, are you still trying to hold on to rule over Egypt, which is the facade that we have, right? Where is that? Isn't it worth it for you, or isn't it good for you to try to come closer to the Yosef inside of you, to really who you are? And isn't it the time already to come close, to come about, to make a movement, to move on? Do we? There's a tremendous message that each and every one of us has some kind of a shame inside of it that is not going to disappear. But this is a shame that was really, its destiny is to really meet. And within this kesher, this connection, to make a secure connection between one another. And Yosef in here creates for the first time a dimension, a space that within the truth does not destroy love, but rather helps love to come about. And only then the real curing, the real medicine starts to come up. And the question, of course, to all of us is, what kind of a truth are you still willing to carry all by yourself? Is it because you're afraid that other people would see it? Or you're afraid that there's not going to be connection anymore? Or where exactly is the time for you to make a move, to start going? And there's a question that you all have to ask yourself. But there's a question that nobody has the answers to besides yourself. And I really hope that we'll be able to be genuine, truthful, and brave, to be able to meet ourselves and people as they are, not to judge people, but rather to be present in the moment, and to take responsibility of what we did in the past, and to take those hard moments of difficulties and to make it a jumping board to grow up to the future, to a better future, to a stronger future. I really hope that this is going to be the beginning of the end of the old world of us, and really the beginning of a new world of who we are as Jews, who are proud, who are secure, compassionate people. And I really hope that that's going to be the ultimate redemption. The ultimate Geulah will start with the freedom that we will have among ourselves, inside of us, from all the stories that we told ourselves why we can't do it and why we need to continue in this situation. It's time for us to get going. It's time for us to do the job. It's time for us to stop being victims, but rather be those who determine how things will be. And I wish all of you Shabbat Shalom, a lot of koach, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Amen. Amen.